Order. Councillor Tweel's not here, and Councillor Duran will come into us via WebEx because he can't use the phone line for this presentation. So he'll be on, I think, is that him there?
Yeah, I'm on now, bro.
You can see him there now. Plus, he'll be able to, he'll have the capability to watch the presentation, correct? Declarations of conflict of interest. None? Okay. Approval of the agenda, 2 items. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor McLeod. Okay, all in favor? Okay. Councillor Ramsey, do you want to bring up the first resolution?
Oh, yes.
EI zones?
Yes, thank you very much. It's been in the works for a little while, and as everyone knew, for the last 3 years, we're trying to get one EI zone for all of Prince Edward Island. And this is our resolution because Senator
Diane
Griffin is pushing it to the floor, and we're hoping that if we have all of the council's approval, that we can push it right on to her and go from there. So, Mr. Kelly, would you like to?
Your worship.
Go ahead.
Your worship, moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor Rivard. Whereas Prince Edward Island is a sovereign province of Canada, and whereas the province constitutes a single and integral zone for the purposes of the design and delivery of most policies and programs of the Government of Canada, and whereas the entirety of Prince Edward Island is smaller than most of the other legally constituted and identified economic zones, and whereas the federal government, through Bill C-30, the Budget Inflation Act 2021, number 1, proposes that the entrenchment in legislation, the establishment of 2 economic zones within the province for the purposes of the Employment Insurance Act, and whereas such entrenchment would legislate in statutory inequity between neighbors and co-workers by imposing different rules for eligibility and access to benefits for seasonal workers under the Employment Insurance Act, and whereas such inequity would be disruptive to the economic and cultural well-being of the provincial community and arbitrarily impose hardship upon seasonal workers to the exclusion of others, and whereas the Council of the City of Charlottetown is in support of the move from 2 economic zones back to 1 single economic zone, therefore be it resolved that the Parliament of Canada amend Division 36, Schedule 6 of Bill C-30, the Budget Implementation Act 2021, number 1, to ensure that Prince Edward Island is regarded as a single economic zone for the purposes of the interpretation of the Employment Act, and be it further resolved that such amendment be read Schedule 6, Sub 5, the region of Prince Edward Island, consisting of the province of Prince Edward Island, Your worship.
Clear? Questions? Questions called?
Questions called.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councillor Duran? Councillor Duran, are you on mute?
Sorry about that.
Yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay. Nay?
Yay.
Nay?
Yay.
Okay. Did you understand the resolution, Councillor?
No, I didn't. Sorry. Could you repeat it?
Do you have? It's the same resolution that we passed at the strategic priorities intergovernmental cooperation meeting.
Yes.
Yay?
Yes.
Okay.
I said yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we'll go to the next item, and just give me 1 second. Aaron, do you want to present the persons with you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Aaron Hansen from down at CEDC. I'm their Director of Operations, and about a year ago we started into a process to put some thought into the Province House area of Charlottetown due to the fact that there were so many things happening with Province House itself, with the library moving, with contemplated renovations to the Confed Center, with a push for pedestrian row on Sydney. We felt that there was a need for an overarching look at the area so that as these things develop in silos, there's a background document that everyone can kind of lean on as a guiding principle. We engaged Rob LeBlanc from Fathom Studios in Halifax, and we went through a multi-month process with public meetings and business owner meetings to come up with a rather fantastic plan, in my opinion. So we've been waiting eagerly to get in front of council to let everyone see it and hopefully get behind it and get excited. And you all have a copy of the presentation in front of you in the form of a kind of coffee table book, which is pretty nice. So with that, we'll let Rob go through the presentation and we'll do questions at the end. Go ahead, Rob.
All right, Aaron, thanks. Everybody can see the screen, all right?
Yep.
Looks good.
All right, well, thanks for having me. I certainly wish I could be there. Hopefully the bubble will open up back again soon. But I'm going to walk you through about a 5-month process that we prepared starting in late September of 2020. And I've only got about 20-25 minutes, as I understand, and I want to walk through some context and some precedents that we looked at in preparing the study. I want to focus on some of the engagement process and outcomes that we heard from the local community and business owners. And then ultimately we're going to get to the findings and recommendations of the plan. And really this was a plan that started in roughly 1999. Ernie Morello and I were working on a downtown streetscape study for Charlottetown, and we had identified the Heritage District as kind of roughly the study area for a special district. And here we are 20-some years later, and things are moving along, but in the interim, Queen Street was developed, the waterfront park was done, there was a whole series of projects that came out of that initial study that led to built works. And so Aaron mentioned the pink dashed line is the study area, kind of bounded by Queen Street and Church Street on both ends, and Grafton and Sydney Street. And, we started this project by looking at a number of special districts. Over the last couple of years, our firm, which was formerly Kissix and renamed to Fathom, started work on the Argyle Streetscape study. And similarly, this was tied to one of the heritage cores of downtown Halifax, and the idea was to create a special entertainment district for the city. And part of that was creating a shared street, and a shared street concept is really a curbless profile, so it's an undifferentiated part of open space that is easier to navigate for people with visual impairments, and also easier to navigate for a number of people. Just makes it easier to switch a street from being sole purpose for traffic into something that can reflect back and forth between traffic and public space. So as part of the Argyle Street project, we developed kind of the shared street concept, a lot of illustrative that you're going to see for Charlottetown as well. And then this work was built using kind of the latest streetscape technology, soil cells, to create healthy urban green downtown and to manage stormwater runoff. And so these are some of the soil cells that went in. And the project opened a little over 2 years ago, and it has since become kind of one of the premier entertainment destinations in Halifax. And what was initially designed to be a shared street, since COVID has turned into a public space, so they've shut down traffic in and through this area. It may come back, but we're using those same principles when looking at the Charlottetown district, the shared street concept, something that could move back and forth between cars and vehicles and be shut down for either. And we developed a signage vocabulary for this. It's been taken over on weekends for all kinds of different events. And when we started that project, we went off to Montreal and looked at really Canada's first shared street concept around Place des Arts in Montreal. And what you'll see in these pictures are a lot of what was reflected in the Halifax design. And some of it we were able to pick up that didn't get built in Halifax was proposed for Charlottetown. But as well, the old Montreal urban square has been renovated, and it's this mix of a very modern landscape feature using a vocabulary of stone and materials that are common in the architecture of the area. So we're blending this very unique heritage with a very modern urban form. And the community engagement strategy, we held a whole series of events in the month of October. We held a business owners workshop, we held a public workshop, and we had Catherine Hennessy out doing a walkabout of the district with participants as well. And we also hosted an online survey where we collected 182 responses. And so all of that was instrumental in informing the ideas that came to bear in this plan. And some of the ideas that we heard certainly was, we'd like more street trees, we'd like improved landscaping, we need to address public washrooms and sidewalks, we need more seating amenities around the district, we need to make the district safe for bicycles and for transit. Improved parking, we need year-round activities, and we need to look at the treatment of Sydney Street in the same way that Richmond Street has been treated. And from a public perspective, the public are really interested in year-round activities, so winter things that could be done in this area, improving the general safety of the neighborhood, creating more and better accessibility to the Confederation Center, more flexible seating, and there was a lot of discussion about water features as part of this plan. From the online survey, we heard things about better representation and inclusivity in the history of this, not just being colonial history, but really the indigenous history. More public art, better equality, and public celebration. And so online we heard a lot about street trees and water features and making spaces warm and comfortable year-round and using green infrastructure and all things that were pulled into the design. We were very fortunate to have a very engaged steering committee as part of this process, and I'll give thanks to them at the end of this presentation. But we started with two general concepts that were developed out of the community engagement sessions in October, and around early December we presented these back to the steering committee to evolve the guiding principles and key narrative elements of the plan. And the steering committee reinforced this idea of more democratic spaces, greater inclusivity, more participation of the public in these spaces, expanding the representation and diversity of the heritage and cultural groups in the area, prioritizing pedestrian experiences, and enhancing the seasonal uses and safety concerns. And overall, the thrust of this plan is creating a cohesive identity for the district, something that feels like you're part of the same thing, no matter where you're at in the district. And there was a number of key narrative elements that were developed in this plan as well. So that led to an overall master plan, which I'm now going to kind of walk you through. We're going to start at Richmond Street, and we're going to walk around Queen Street and Grafton and down Great George and Sydney. I think that's the order, but we'll walk through the details of this plan. So Richmond Street or Victoria Row is the premier destination for both on the edge of the institutional and cultural spaces that are bounded by the Province House and the Confederation Center, with private businesses on the south side. And so activating this and making this part of the district, and what began as a test with the merchants and Ernie Morello developing a plan for this area, I think it was 10 or maybe even 15 years ago, has proven to be very successful, and so it's time to expand this idea to other areas of the district. And central to this part of the plan is, we spent a lot of time with the fire department making sure that we have safe access to the street, and one of the fallouts of that is relocating the patio zones closer to the buildings so that we don't have to pass alcohol and food across sidewalks. And it also gives us additional space for the sidewalk that can be borrowed from the street to provide that extra space that is needed for servicing for fire and for CCA loading. There's a lot of discussion. We worked with the CCA very closely and their architects to create more porosity for the upper podiums that surround the Confederation Center. So that includes more steps, more access up to the upper podium, as well as a larger and more full-time integrated stage that will be part of it. There'll be a new entrance that is part of the CCA, which has always been seen as kind of a back-of-house entrance, which will now be a new, more major entrance off of Victoria Row, and then additional seating and planting. And part of this will be taking this urban soil cell system and redeveloping the urban forest in this area. So a look at what that could look like, and at the end of this presentation, we'll take you on a video fly-through, and I'll show you a link where you can get to that on YouTube as well. So again, we've got the archway and a common design vocabulary of sandstone and earthen materials that form the basis of the color scheme for this plan. So we're very much borrowing from the nature of Prince Edward Island to convey the imagery. And we've got the seating blocks that extend down the street, which are named and branded. There's an interpretive overlay that talks about the names of the adjoining historic buildings that are part of this district. So we're removing the curbs as part of this profile and drain to a central continuous drain system which feeds the soil cells and back into the planting and root medium for the vegetation along the edge. And this is kind of a nice scene, of course lit so that this is night and day. It's a very unique space. And another view standing out in front of the Province House looking back along Victoria Row. So if we move to Sydney Street, the idea would be to continue that same design vocabulary for the streetscape. Again, we're looking at a partial closure of Sydney Street as part of this plan so that the sidewalk cafes and businesses can spill out and deliveries will happen in the morning, and we've got opportunities for drop-off zones and part-time parking as well. And part of making this successful was reconfiguring the provincial parking lot as part of this plan so that we can shut off a portion of the street. We can either shut it off at Great George or we can shut it off mid-block and allow people to circle back through the parking lot. And so for this part of the plan, we've got a public art piece which pulls out onto Queen Street and the notion of these acrylic windows, 500 acrylic windows that represent the 500 lots. So an overhead art piece that would be lit at night, and through the day, the sunlight would stream through these colored panels, making this a very colorful destination year-round, especially as the sun angles start to drop in the winter. It's a way to add color and life to this space. But we see these district markers marking the boundaries of the district, and you'll see that all around. Lots more planting that's part of this plan. A unified street lighting system, and so this is on Sydney Street about mid-block, again, where we can partially shut off the street at different times of the year to allow the street to be pedestrian only, or the gates can open up and be a shared street concept, much like Argyle Street and Placid Arts that I showed you earlier. And again, this is all designed to be winter friendly so that things can be pulled in and moved out, heating can be put in. We could look at adding gas lines to the street to add outdoor heat, as we did on Argyle Street a number of years ago. And then Queen Street, the north is kind of facing down, so we've had to reorient this plan. The new library is in the top left corner of this plan, and the Confederation Center is down at the bottom. And really what we're doing here is we're widening the sidewalk quite considerably. We're narrowing the street lanes back to about 3.8 meters, so there's still room to back out in and out of the angled parking. But really the streets are very, very wide right now, much wider than they need to be, and we'd like to reallocate that to the sidewalk to provide a lot more space. If you've walked along this wall, you know that the sidewalk's only about 1.5 meters wide here, and it's very tight. So that, combined with the new stairs up to the podium, is going to be a central part of the activating Charlotte Street. So another rendering showing that extra wide sidewalk, which you currently don't have now, some ramps up to the CPA grounds, and again, the Center for Arts had not finished their design process, and so we're hoping that some of these ideas get integrated into that, but it will be up to them to carry this plan forward for their works. And out in front of the box office, the plan, as we were working through with the CPA architects, was to shift around the box office location to Grafton Street and provide a lot more room for water features and more seating in and around the current drop-off area that's there today. So then, if we swing around to Grafton Street, here's the Confederation Center down at the bottom of the page. And Grafton Street, you'll know today there's angled parking all along here. We've got a bus stop that's centrally located in the middle of this, and part of this plan, again, is to narrow the travel lanes up to about 3.5, 3.6 meters, to change from 45-degree angled parking to just standard parallel parking, create a new drop-off zone, which will be the new drop-off for the new entrance into the Confederation Center, and to relocate the bus to a much safer location. When we met with the bus company, there's a lot of people that get off the bus and then run across the street center block to the other bus stop across the street. And so the plan is to relocate that to a signalized intersection where it's much safer to cross the street. So again, if you walk along the Grafton Street, you'll notice it's the bumpers hanging out over the curb between the existing wall of the Confederation Center only leaves you about 1.5 meters of space, and so this new view gives you a much wider crush space for the people to gather entering into the Confederation Center, and much more streetscape prominence along this very important historic corridor. So if we look at Grace George Street, this is Province House on the right-hand side, and the waterfront would be on the very left-hand side, so we've had to swing the plan around again. The plan is to maintain the same ground plane and to extend the same ground and sidewalk treatment that we have on Richmond and Sydney Street all the way up Great George. We'll maintain some on-street parking. We've got this new entrance into the parking garage that's proposed to recapture one of the corners, and we'll talk in the next slide about Province House plans as well. And so this is a new look up Great George Street, a central linear drain feature. We're maintaining the existing trees. We're introducing some new trees along this corridor, and lots of room for some a spill out of what was the 1884 Newberry Gardens are spilling all around the district, using some of the species that would be endemic to the indigenous population, but also some of the early colonial plants that were brought over at the time of pre-Confederation when the area was settled. And when looking at Province House, we worked with Parks Canada and the government of PEI to look at some different options that would, provide a ground plane and lots of interesting urban design features to reflect the investment in Province House. And part of that was maintaining the carriageway all the way around for visiting dignitaries. To have surrounding gardens, an Acadian forest garden on one side and an indigenous sculpture garden on the other side, so we're telling both stories, and a sunken sandstone plaza that would be have interactive fountains that would be lit different colors at night, but as well could be sunken and perhaps even used as a skating feature in the winter. So again, looking back at Province House, this very grand, large urban plaza to allow all the things that happen around Province House to happen in a much more natural way. We've worked with SEPED principals to make sure that the views and safety were maintained. So we've had to kind of pull back some of the trees to open up the vistas of Province House, but we're maintaining a lot of the large ones around the outer edge. And again, at night, this would be lit up with colored water fountains and lots of colored lighting on Province House. Then from Province House, this new plaza, looking back to step up to the Confederation Center, a whole series of large-scale sandstone blocks that would take you up to the indigenous art gardens that surround this corner of the space and provide lots of seating opportunities looking back onto Province House. Again, another vista looking back at Victoria Row, and then an elevated vista looking over that space. And you'll see we've shifted from kind of a street cross-section with sidewalks to a very much an open urban plaza that can be used by cars and people. And then in front of the Coles Garden, looking at this Acadian forest garden under the tree canopy. And then out at the corner of Richmond Street and Church Street, again, these district markers at the corner. And just a summary of the price tag. We looked at an overall phasing plan for this. So phase 1 or A would be redeveloping Richmond Street, and phase B would be the Sydney Street. And then we've looked at a number of the components of the plan all the way around, and we've priced those out as individual projects with an overall budget price tag in 2021 dollars at roughly $10.8 million. And that includes 30% contingency, 17% design costs, and taxes included or on top of that. And I just wanted to end by giving special thanks to the steering committee that were very active throughout this process. We met monthly to review different concepts and to get some feedback. I won't name them all. And for those of you and members of council and the mayor that participated in the public engagement components, the workshops and walkabouts that we had. And I thought I would end the presentation with a virtual kind of fly through. We're here on Queen Street, and we're going to kind of pan down the future of Victoria Row. And you can see these steps on the left-hand side giving us much more access to the Confederation Center. We're coming down Great George, looking at this new plaza in front of Province House, and these major blocks that would be seating and public art along the side, and also there's a ramp built into that takes you up to that additional level of the Confederation Center. We've got some movable seating so that in the summer we can expand these areas for different events. And as we move down the block, you'll see on the left-hand side the outdoor patios have been moved closer to the building, the new outdoor event stage on the right-hand side. And then as we fly down Sydney Street, we've lost the street and we've got this great new urban plaza with the overhead 500 window installation. And the rearranged parking lot, lots of new interpretive panels that talk about the history of the area and of the church in specific, and then looking back up Great George Street and back to Sydney Street. I think we've got one last kind of view down Grafton Street with the new Confederation Center, and we've designed this stuff to make sure that snow plows have unimpeded access to be able to maintain this. So we work with the city's engineering department on these various concepts. The relocated bus stop that would be part of this, and then looking back to new integrated plaza space in front of the memorial in front of Province House. And then one just last area look back at Province House. And in part of the presentation there, we have, this is all up on YouTube, so if you wanted to share this with your constituents, there's a link to that YouTube video as well. So that takes me to 25 minutes, and I'll stop the presentation and address any questions that you might have.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Aaron, Kelly,
Let's just
Steve?
Go through or do you guys want to say anything?
Maybe just briefly that we're really supportive generally of it. I think as he mentioned, a number of pieces of the perimeter are still under discussion with our own architects. There's, for example, our loading ramp in off Richmond, which is a long-standing challenge. We're exploring options for that. So that corner might not end up looking exactly as depicted if we can solve the loading ramp problem. So we're looking at little things, but by and large, we're just, we're very supportive. We appreciate being involved. It is our entire perimeter that's being considered for this project. So of course it impacts us greatly, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Councilor Bernard?
So, Steve, is there any concerns over parking? Like I noticed a lot of the angle parking comes out to parallel parking, and to me, you're losing at least 50% of the parking.
Yeah, and you know what, when we talked about that, it's losing 50% of 20 spots. We're an 1,100 seat theater, like we don't have parking as it is. That parking is it's a great question, but it's not enough of a loss for us that it's actually the widening of the sidewalks is better for us. It's worth it. Yeah.
So I just wonder, was there conversations with the Murphy group? Because when we talked about Sydney Street in the past, there's a lot of fire concerns, the propane tanks, and with the road and stuff like that. So has that been solved?
Yeah, Kevin Murphy was on the steering committee, and he's been through the process all along. So.
Now, wasn't Kevin concerned about the fire department?
Oh, Robbie, I think you consulted with the fire department heavily, eh?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time with the fire department. I know having done Argyle Street, the level of involvement and things that we had to go through with the fire department meant that they were our prime contact and first contact as we started this process.
So as far as Sydney Street, like I know there's a lot of concerns with the fire department over the large propane tanks all the different businesses had. So that's been resolved through this plan?
We certainly contacted them. There are things that will have to happen as part of this plan, and that's all been accounted for in the cost estimates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
So just, Steve, did you lose 20 parking spaces from going from angle to parallel?
I don't recall. I'm just estimating, but it's, yeah.
But nothing significant to...
I think it was only about 13 spaces that we lost on Grafton.
Thank you.
We need an underground spot with 400, so.
Yeah, but I'm not just talking.
Yeah, well, that was...
You're doing also for Queen too, right?
Yep, it's true. It's a factor.
Queen, so.
Yep. No, it is a factor.
It's parallel goes both. You're right, yeah.
So how many are you losing off Queen?
I don't think we lost any on Queen, as a matter of fact.
What's
Really?
that?
Is it still angled parking up Queen?
It's still angled parking on Queen Street here.
I thought it was going parallel to.
No, it's still angled. Here it is. Let me just bring it up here.
That's Sydney.
There's Queen, so we still have the same number of angled
Okay.
spaces we had. In fact, we picked up one more because the drop-off area moves from one over to the other to Grafton Street.
So how did you make the sidewalk larger then?
Narrow the street.
The travel lane here is 5 meters wide, pretty much on both sides, so it's much wider than it needs to be.
Yeah, it's one of those old north-south streets. That's how cities were built.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank
very
you,
much,
Councillor Bernard.
Rob, for your report. On accessibility signaling at intersections, I did see where you did have accessibility up there. Charlottetown is lacking in this department. Is there more up-to-date signaling going to come for accessibility?
Certainly we can look at the timing as we move the 2 bus stops on Grafton Street. We'll be looking at the timing, and there may be an opportunity to modernize some of the signals. I think that's, there's only 2 signals in this whole area, both on Grafton Street.
Yeah, and that's the big issue. It'd be a shame to see us go to this amount of infrastructure and not put in the proper signaling. And as people with sight problems are, when they're coming to the corner, there's supposed to be a specific post and pole and distance from the corner.
Yeah.
And so we're lacking desperately there just because we're an older infrastructure. But if there hasn't been some insight into that, there probably should be, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's accounted for in the cost estimates as well. Our traffic engineer, Roger Boychuk, did a whole accessibility audit.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Good look at that scrambled intersection. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you. Rob, you mentioned about moving the transit off
Yeah.
Grafton Street. Approximately where were you thinking about putting that? Because that's been going for 15 years in the same spot.
Let me show you here. I think this is, so right now it's mid-block on both ends. And when we met with the transit authority, I can't remember his name, but he was saying there's a lot of safety concerns with people getting off the bus, crossing mid-block right in the middle of the street. And so the proposal is to move them up closer to the Province House intersection to the University Avenue. So we've got a staging for 2 buses on one side, 1 bus on the other side, and then a loading zone for the Confederation Center with access into the garage area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just as a side note there, that loading zone right now is that really not so nice lift, and it used to be the garbage of Mavers.
Yeah.
And so part of our plan, and I should say too, we're just a few months behind this project in our own revitalization plan, so we'll be here in a number of months presenting our plans too, but what we're looking at now is that being refurbished and beautified so that it's actually our main gallery entrance.
Okay.
And it's accessible and made to look nicer, but also can be used functionally.
So will you be looking for money too?
Oh yeah,
Talk to
this
Mr.
doesn't
Kelly.
come close.
Talk to Mr. Kelly.
No, we're looking at it. I mean, with the library moving, we're looking at, we have to renovate the entire library space, right? It's not to code, it's been a library for 55 years.
Councillor Ramsey.
So where's the funding gonna come from? Is it all from us, or is it
No.
3 levels of government, or Parks Canada, or?
To be determined. Each
Okay.
project would happen.
I like that.
Project would happen in silos, and you would expect the feds and the province and the city would all work together on all parts.
Okay, that's fair.
I think part of us showing up today was that well, like Aaron said earlier, we're talking about with if you include the library, and then this beautification, which makes sense to build on a $100 million investment in Province House, and then we've got our own needs to renovate after the library moves. You got 4 major projects happening in essentially the same place.
Yeah.
As much as possible, we want to make sure that it's known that we're working together, we're talking to each other, we're trying to at least conceptualize them as a singular benefit to the downtown area, even though they'll have to be looked at separately. We also don't want to be going cap in hand separately for the same city block, essentially, but, yeah.
Councilor Wayne Long.
Bob, it's Wayne Long and Aaron. I had the opportunity to see some of this presentation in early going with his worship, and I believe with Councilor Yankoff a while ago. And personally, I want to jump into it. However, that's not reality just yet, but I'm curious to know, is there an additional narrative that comes with this around the economic, social, cultural aspects? Obviously, there's a huge number of benefits with a project of this nature, and often more than not in today's age, beyond the economics, we talk about the cultural and social value and benefits with this project, which would be valuable for selling on the ground to taxpayers, but as well to other funding partners, and it ties together to the bigger picture. As Steve indicated, everybody's working together, not in silos. And I know it's a beautiful book here, and I haven't read the entire report, but I'm just curious to know if there's an additional supportive narrative beyond the beautiful streetscapes and visuals themselves.
It's a good question. No, there isn't one. We've got the costs in here, and of course the stuff that goes with it. But there, I know on Argyle Street, prior to us starting that process, the city had hired a feasibility expert to go through and look at the long-term payback, the tax bump that would happen, the social benefits. And that document, I provided that to Waterfront, or to Aaron, and but it wasn't done specifically for this project. I agree, it might be a logical next step.
Steve?
If I could just add to that, I think that narrative is where the partnership comes in, because in our case, in the library, we're going to be putting expanded educational programs for the community, an interpretive center on Canadian heritage, working with Parks Canada next door, who you may know is revisiting their entire interpretive center experience for people that visit Province House after. So I think programmatically, and the presentation touched on the feedback in terms of the need for more varied programs. And I think that's where maybe Confed Center and Province House are going to play in programmatically to that narrative of what will ultimately be, a new tourist destination with the flavor of an old Quebec. Like it'll be so comprehensive in terms of the look and feel, programs, what you learn while you're there, and so on. I think working together, we can create that narrative.
Councilor Bernard?
Thank you, Rich.
Yes, you.
Just one more question for Rob. First of all, I'd say though, it's pretty impressive.
It is.
I guess when you have 20 years, I guess it should come out pretty nice. It is pretty impressive. I just have a question for Rob. You still there?
I'm still there, yeah.
I'm just wondering, on Victoria Row, you had mentioned about the merchants moving their tables and chairs and so on next to the building.
Yeah.
Just looking at the picture. So will they still have the same amount of seating for their patrons as they do now?
Yeah, they probably will have a little bit more. The Richmond Street is relocated a little bit northward on this plan, which provides more space for the sidewalk, a little bit more space for the sidewalk cafes, and it works quite well with the fire department with the 6 meters of clearance that they need vertically and horizontally.
Thank you.
So that would eliminate the sidewalk that's already there. Yeah, that's great.
Looks good.
Yeah, it does.
Now, nobody nailed in on the parking lot, the church parking lot.
Do you have something about that, Aaron?
Yeah, so let's hope that we approach the folks that the parishioners own that parking lot.
Church
The church has two goals, or two outcomes they like out of that. It generates revenue because they rent the spots, and it provides parking to the people that go to mass.
Right.
So as long as we can continue to provide those two things, whether it's a lump sum where we buy the parking lot, or like to be determined how we deal with the parking lot. Currently, CADC has engaged Herman McQuaid to put a value on that piece of land, and that will be just information for negotiation. There's only 59 spots in the church's portion of that parking lot. It's not really enough parking spots, enough mass of parking to start putting in parking equipment and charging. You'll never get your money back that way. There's also a risk to the provincial legislative parkers if that all of a sudden fell into private sector hands. A building would be built there, and then the parking would have to be somewhere else. So it's probably in all of our best interest to try and get control of that lot, just so we can determine its destiny. But that's where we're at the moment. As soon as we get the number back, then we'll continue to discuss and negotiate with the
Good luck with that initiative.
It's tough. They're tough.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Richard. But that'd be an ideal spot for a parking garage then.
I think many would argue no, given its historical significance, but
Oh, I was looking for a place to park a car. It's ideal.
If you do 3 stories underground, that would be an ideal spot for parking garage.
Park downstairs and build a heritage building.
yeah.
And that's a good place for a parking tunnel.
Ernie Morello's famous line is a parking lot is just a bridesmaid waiting to become the bride.
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you very much. So, Rob, in Halifax, they have the panels of the 500 lots on Sydney. So, do they come down in the winter months, or do they stay up? And if they do stay up, has there been much trouble with overhead snow falling down, or any of that type of nature?
Yeah, let me just go back to Argyle just for a sec here. I don't know where,
Is that your project there, Mr. Kelly? Mr. Savage. That was Mr. Savage.
yeah, we had designed an overhead Argyle pattern canopy that was designed to be collapsible, so if a fire engine ever needed to put up a ladder, it's designed, there's one key that goes in and this whole thing kind of falls down. And so the same will be true with the interactive art piece. I think there's still some work to be done involving the arts community in that project. But yeah, it's designed to stay there year round. And they're just simple, lightweight acrylic panels.
So the city engineering hasn't mentioned anything on that nature yet, as of yet?
No, I think, and you raise a good point, is that we've done this design concept, we've met with the city engineer, and there'll be a number of things as we move into the more detailed phase of design that will have to be confirmed.
Right. Okay, thank you.
That's one of them, yeah.
Any more questions?
Just where was the cutoff for Sydney Street for the gates? Is that just
Right by the old Dublin pub. Yeah.
Just beyond the parking lot?
Yeah. I thought we were going to get the whole street, but I guess that's not going to happen, right? Oh, okay.
That's certainly nice place.
It looks great. Great plan.
It's awesome, right? And the budget was done in sections, obviously, so we can pick what's opportune. Like, obviously, we would try to time a particular part of the project with whatever part of the project Steve's doing on the Convention Center, so that you're not doing something and then coming in and tearing it up to do the next part. So we work together, and Parks has already started the process for in front of Province House.
Yeah.
That's going to be opening early 2023, I think.
What is the Province House? Yeah. That's the target date.
Yeah, that's the target.
The new target.
The moving target.
Could be another 50 million too.
100 million.
It's at 100 million right
It's
now.
hard to believe.
If you think about the amount of money being invested in this 2-block radius, it's crazy.
And the thing, just to give fair warning again, we're yet another national monument.
That's
It was
right.
built 56 years ago and we're falling apart. So we have a substantial project coming to shore up some things that have been falling apart, but also that's the opportunity to address some very long-standing issues, like our problem on Richmond, like the Grafton entrance and so on. So, you know, as Aaron just mentioned, the big thing for us is timing, that let's please not renovate Queen Street or Grafton, and then when we're ready, we come back and need to dig it up to get it access to services, so,
We can do
yeah.
that part.
Sounds like water and sewer public works.
No, that never happened. Never.
Any questions here, Councilor Rivera?
I think it's fantastic.
I think it's great.
Yeah, looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
I just hope we all live to see it.
Oh, we will. We will. You'll be around, Kevin, I'm sure.
Yeah, timeline.
That's the order.
The timeline is to be determined. A lot of it will hinge on the Confed Center's work. The library is exiting this fall.
Yeah.
So then that will kind of give them a green light to start their projects. So whatever we'll work together, obviously, but
Yeah, and we're well along on our conceptual design, so we will be presenting here before too long. But we're running a parallel fundraising research project with some fundraising partners we've hired, because it's going to be substantial cost, and we'll need to be raising significant funds across the country, actually, for what we're doing. So programmatically, people in Manitoba aren't going to be interested in funding a new entrance off Grafton. But programmatically, if we're doing a Canadian heritage historical review of all parts of the country, that's where we bring their involvement. And so we're kind of working on that piece in parallel.
So has there been any consultation or any feedback from McCullough or the federal government, the provincial government on the funding?
yeah, they partially funded the project. They all have copies of the plan. The city council was really the last stakeholder to engage, and it seems like everyone's happy.
Oh, yeah.
So everyone seems to support it, so that's excellent.
So Steve, is some funding coming forth, Kelly, from?
For our project, we're not there yet.
Not there.
We've already got private interest, I can share that.
And-
But we have a big number that we're shooting at right now.
Okay.
And we'll present something soon, but it's going to be tens of millions in terms of renovations
Wow.
to the library and to the whole
peripheral
surrounding
thing, yeah.
area. So it'll be
So, sum it up, you're holding it up.
we can
He doesn't
amazing
mind that.
fast if this gets green lit.
Terry, we're just way in front.
Yes,
Yeah, we'll be here soon enough. Yeah.
Pretty impressive though.
Is that it, guy? Is that good? Listen, Steve, Kelly, Aaron, and Rob, thank you very much.
Thanks all for having me, wish I was there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Motion to adjourn, Marshall.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting, guys.
No,
Oh, yes.
Question, Wayne?
Do you guys have anything to follow up, Wayne, you and Laurel, or just?
I think Councillor Lee and Councillor Long look pretty good back there.
Yeah, they do. So you're all right with that? Next stages, where do we go? Mr. Kelly?
We wait for the presentation from the Confed Center, as they say, they'll be back to us for a bit of help, I believe.
But one thing should be brought up now, Your Worship, is that my understanding that there was, I think, if I remember correctly, $3 million put in the budget last year to fix up the Queen's Parkade, and now it's not there. Now you go look in front of it, see the pieces falling off. Are we not doing anything about that? That's got to be brought in, when all this money starts getting asked, if someone gets hurt, because we've had reports in the last couple of years on the dangers of that Queen Parkade.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that would have carried over. My understanding is it didn't, I can't find the budget, so I'm assuming it's taken out.
It didn't get carried over, did it, Mr. Kelly?
Unless I'm wrong.
No, it didn't carry over.
No, so that will be a discussion at the next capital round as
But am I
well.
wrong? Did it get taken out? Or
Yes,
is still-
It did,
Yeah.
because of you get the Simmons Aquarina, the garage, Public Works garage, and the possibility of the third fire station out in West Royalty. or
So,
Windsor.
we're 25 million above what we poured in the other year. What's the other three?
Yeah,
When you're talking about something that's a safety issue, we're getting very close to being there.
and
Anyway.
we are praying that bill, what is it, C-15, it goes through the Senate, it's to double the gas tax.
That's,
It's not there yet. I sent an email to John Dewey again to find out where it's at. So that'll be double what we get.
Are you going anywhere?
Motion to adjourn?
Endorsement through the-
Okay, thank you kindly, thank you very much.